Matthew Holt, the healthcare blog, back with another THCV Spotlight. This one is kind of unusual. We have a company launch, but it's not a startup trying to fix anything in healthcare. It's a law firm, which is going to fix all the startups who are trying to fix things in healthcare. Or maybe they're not fixing, I don't know.
That's right.
Anyway, on your screen on the left there is Kaitlyn O'Connor. On the right is Rebecca Gwilt. And they are from the brand new law firm, which is not called Elevare. It's called Elevare. Is that right?
Elevare, yes.
Right. Elevare. I still want it right. Elevare Law, right? So Elevare Law.
It's like I've been called Becky and Becca and Bex. However you say it, we'll respond.
It's actually I've got very rough about that. Now people start trying to call me Matt. I don't like it. My name is Matthew. Now I'm an old man.
Matthew.
I'm going to be grumpy.
I'm always very careful about that.
Don't try. Yes. Don't dare get it wrong.
I'm a grown up.
I'm a grown up. Exactly. All right. So Rebecca, let's start with you. You had another law firm with your name on it relatively recently, and you started a new law firm. I
sure did.
I assume there's something in the air which suggests that there is a requirement for legal and regulatory help and advice and counsel for startups in the healthcare business. Tell me more.
Yeah. So I spent the last 10 plus years running the nation's first healthcare innovation law firm. And we made that up, that became a thing because we said it was. And before that, I worked in healthcare policy and technology. And, after 10 years of sort of heading in one direction, I decided it was a time for a change. And right now we're, it's all about leveling up. So choose your metaphor: flying, jumping, reaching the mountaintop, elevating your game. That's what we're doing in 2025. And because I'm passionate about working with companies building, the future of healthcare, I'm going to take them all with me. And little known, but soon to be well known, Kaitlyn was the first full-time employee at my former firm. I hired her fresh out of law school and recognized her incredible talent and took her with me as well.
Took a big risk on this fresh law grad, but it was great. Yeah,
that's right. It's not that much of a risk. I understand. I've seen better calls Saul. They just fire you if you're no good. But you lost it, Kaitlyn. And now you've decided to take an even bigger risk. And so right now it's just the two of you. I understand when you started, your previous firm was you built up, got quite large, and you became pretty well known, Rebecca, within digital health and health tech as being sort of health innovation lawyer, who understood a lot of what is going on. So let's start with the sort of basics. There are companies at all stages, many of whom are too early to afford a lawyer. And you'll see a lot of deals with a very large Silicon Valley and other firms where they are doing stuff for stock, and then as soon as the venture capital arrives, the billing gets very extreme very quickly.
Yes.
But there's a lot of different things going on in the world of innovation, right? There is starting a company, getting all that stuff together. There is then figuring out what you're going to do and getting all sort of intellectual property, all that stuff. And then the last sort of thing is you have to dive into whatever area of healthcare you're in, and depending whether that's touching the FDA or touching clinical practice or so many laws and regulations and state laws. And so what bit are you specializing in doing?
I would say the feedback we get from clients, when we really know we've done a good job, is that they were trying to unlock something and they couldn't unlock it. And they needed someone that spoke a couple of languages. They needed to speak tech, they needed to speak healthcare regulatory, and they needed to speak, business model, right? And so I think my differentiator, and I think Kaitlyn would say the same thing as well, has been sort of working with companies in partnership to develop business models, finance flows, relationships, partnerships that sort of operate in the in-between where there isn't regulation, but it's a little bit risky. And there are tremendously talented healthcare lawyers out there that specialize in specific areas in very traditional settings: hospitals, health systems, pharma, medical practices. And where we differ from them is in our ability to sort of build things anew, right? So in digital health, these are I'll let Kaitlyn talk about it, but the RPM space is a really interesting space that illustrates pretty well sort of how we built our value as lawyers.
Yeah, I think what I would say is we don't specialize in one specific area of law. We don't specialize just in FDA or just in HIPAA or just in the anti-kickback statute. We specialize in how all of those things work together with reimbursement and payment policy and all of the, AI policy
Corporate.
and emerging trends in the space. So we specialize in how all of those things work together to help our clients predict what's next, unlock new opportunities based on what we believe is next, and turning that into real impact with their business and with patient care and everything else that comes with transforming healthcare. So yeah, it's more of how everything works together and turning it into something real than it is about a specific area of law that applies to medical devices or the like.
So before we leave the topic of the new firm, what kind of customers are you looking for? And what kind of customers are you working with? And by that, I mean, there are, obviously, you mentioned a bunch of folks who have their fingers in the innovation pie. There are hospitals with innovation funds and, doing work with private startups and pharma and people sort of crowding around the edges of that. There's obviously startup companies of various flavors. Which ones of those are you working with or want to work with? And what level, what type of company so in other words, the person who's got a dog and a computer and has got an idea, are they ready for they probably need legal help, but they may not be ready for you, or vice versa. And then you have the companies who raise hundreds of millions, who presumably have I don't know, in-house counsels. Where do you fit?
Yeah, it's a fair question, and it's a little bit of a shift from what I've been doing the last 10 years. You are correct that a lot of clients may not be ready for investment in counsel. I really love working with those clients and understanding the kinds of emerging trends based on what new companies are coming around. So I continue to provide weekly office hours that for mentorship and ideation and things like that for very early stage companies who come to me that aren't really ready to hire me. So I will continue to do that. I also work with Plug and Play and Techstars. I think Kaitlyn works with Jumpstart Foundry. We are very involved in the startup space, but most of our clients now are either spinning out of large established companies, or they are, seed Series A. So they've gotten their first round of institutional funding, and they're ready to sort of invest in scaling their business model.
Yeah, I think where we add the most value is for companies that, like Rebecca said, are ready to invest in legal services and probably companies that are trying to solve a new problem. We have a lot of clients that come to us that have been working with other legal counsel for a while, trying to build a new model that doesn't exist yet. And what we hear when they come to us is we can actually take their idea and turn it into reality much more quickly than previous counsel that they've worked with. And it's not,
that's what we like to do,
and that's what we like to do. That's what's
you clearly haven't figured out the whole billing by the minute, 6-minute period for ad infinitum model, which is I think what you're supposed
to well, we should talk about that, because we one of the things we doubled down on when we built the new firm was using the latest technology to make our firm more efficient and effective for clients. And we are lucky enough to work alongside some pretty smart technologists in the healthcare space. So we know what kind of capability the tech has, and we look way outside of tech tools that are for lawyers. We look for the kind of tech that is safe and secure and confidential, of course, but that can turn one lawyer into maybe 3 lawyers, or turn 2 paralegals into a software, right? We are doing the same kinds of things in law that we see a lot of our care management clients doing, with the combination of licensed professionals that you absolutely need and technology that makes those licensed professionals more efficient. So yes, full stop, legal services are expensive. If I want to hire the absolute smartest people there are, I got to pay them. And if I got to pay them the amount that they want, this is, basic running a business, but we are investing, and I do believe that we are working much more efficiently than a lot of our competitors out there.
Okay, so I was kind of trying to get into like minute 10 without mentioning AI, but you've already, without even mentioning it, you mentioned it. But so there we go. But yeah, and clearly I have put contracts in the ChatGPT and say, explain to me what the hell this says. Just like every other non-lawyer
I don't think that's a bad idea. I mean, yeah. I'm getting much better, deeper, informed questions from clients because they're running some of their stuff through ChatGPT.
100%.
Now, if the thing you're running through ChatGPT says this contract is confidential, you do not do that. But if you want to understand what indemnification means, if you want to take some lawyer, super thick lawyery language and turn it into plain language, I think ChatGPT is a great tool to use. We use something that's much more sophisticated, but it's a large language model. We use a couple of technologies that use large language models. Now what they're based on is sort of trusted and vetted legal, contracts and precedent. But anyway, I don't fault my clients for using ChatGPT. I'll tell you where it gets tricky is when, in the past, when I've had a client that tried to DIY, you could tell immediately that they tried to DIY, and so that led me to say, okay, I got to ask some more questions about what's going on here. Now I get these very polished things that make it sound like the client has thought through all of the angles and purposefully chosen these aspects. And because I'm familiar with LLMs, I can thankfully tell that it's generated. But it is a little bit of, if you're a lawyer that's not using this tech right now, it would be easy to gauge the risk that your client knows what they're doing differently than you should because of their use of the tech. But anyway, I think it's leveling up their game and leveling up our game, which I think is best for everybody.
But then that translates pretty much directly to what's going on in healthcare, right? Exactly the same types of things where people are trying to figure out what can they use AI for, and you're seeing this controversy. So let's go there, because this is This is to me. This is to me. We've got these three things going on at the moment, which are two to three, which are insane, right? So one is we have this big transformation in healthcare towards using AI, and there's a lot of confusion about who's supplying what type of AI, and then who does what. And I've been working with several companies trying to help them figure out how to sell this stuff. It's very hard to explain what you're doing compared to what somebody else is doing. If you go back 10 years, when you were starting, when you were starting the self-innovation more idea, Rebecca, I could tell you it was a telehealth company. It was here, and the RPM company was over there. It's a bit different, and there was and now, and there was a company doing patient, care management or whatever somewhere else. You've got all these different things. You could kind of slice them up. And people like me used to draw maps of the world of digital health and that kind of stuff. And now it's like I have this ChatGPT thing, and it can both, analyze text, it can do voice, it can, it can do a chat bot, it can do a voice, it can create a voice thing. And there are companies in each space that's trying to say, well, they're better. But if I was a buyer, if I was a big hospital system, I'm not sure, is the people who are doing ambient AI scribing now say that they can also do, can do summary of the notes and also start doing diagnosis. Who's doing what? There's that one problem, but we know AI is coming. Right? There was a bunch of AI regulation proposed by the Biden administration. Got eliminated, changed. Some people tell me what happens.
It was a little bit. It was pretty narrowly applicable to certified EHR, but they did put together a lot of guidance materials. So the executive order and then the memoranda that came out of that executive order. But to your point, it's still a little squishy, right? It's all principle based. Right. So yeah, go ahead.
So there was that, and then the next thing that happened, right? So now we have the Trump administration coming in, changing that and doing two things at once. Right? One is it's doing massive, structural reform, and reform is in massive inverted commas there, decimation of various regulatory agencies. So you don't know really, no one knows what. See what it's called these days. ASTP is doing. No one knows who's doing what, where in FDA. CMA. Right. It's all over the map, right? We really people being fired, rehired. There's just general chaos there. So we have this AI thing. We're having this sort of government chaos, and then the last piece, which it happens all the time, is that we're seeing the payment systems undergo maybe change. Talking about Medicare Advantage and the ACA exchanges and this stuff and Medicaid, right? This stuff may be changing as well. So where you are fishing or farming or whatever the thing is as a company may change as well. So you've got technology change, regulatory change, and potentially payment change as well. Who knows? Where should people who care about this stuff and are doing innovation in companies, what should they be looking at? What's the thing that where your eyes are on the ball first? What should they be paying attention to?
Well, I like how you've sliced it, right? Tech and
I'm a consultant.
payment.
That goes into 3 buckets, right?
Yeah. So I think the chaos right now is sort of the point, right? I think that in moments of chaos for innovation in particular, there are upsides and there are downsides. A lot of my clients that work in the Medicaid space are very concerned, and rightly so. But my clients who are in the software as a medical device space are going, well, how the heck are they going to come after us if they don't have anybody working there anymore that understands this policy? So
it sounds like my IRS strategy. Turn my own average.
That's right.
How will they know? Will they really know? Will they really know? How would they know?
I started my career working for the Obama administration and have seen a little bit of the inside of government. And the reality is, in these regulatory agencies, there are not enough resources to go after all of the bad actors that there are. And people who work there that want to make a career for themselves often go for the easy things to prove, right? So in the fraud and abuse world, if you have a really, really complicated arrangement and you are small fish that it's unlikely to be on the government's radar, what you'll hear from white collar defense lawyers is it's too complicated for an AUSA to prove that this is a problem in court. They'd much rather like the guy who's handing out money to homeless people to go in and get scans off the street. Yeah. And so there's this calculus that necessarily goes on where, yes, there are rules about what's okay and what's not okay, and then there's gray area where it might be okay and it might not be okay. Maybe today's environment is one where entrepreneurs are willing to take more risk in the gray area, knowing that the regulators are off their game.
Yeah, and I also think, just sort of going back to sort of the 3 buckets that you mentioned, Matthew, and looking at, who's actually even in agencies anymore to do any of the things they're supposed to do. I will say one of the areas that I expect we will see a big slowdown will be in the approval of medical devices, including software as a medical device, because the FDA has been it's been taken down to just a few people who were already overburdened. But when you look at the 3 buckets that you talked about, when you look at regulation, technology, and payment, and how they're all changing and how they're all working together, the places where I see technology being most valuable right now are in the sort of middle ground among those 3 things. So for example, I do a lot of work with care management companies, RPM, chronic care management, APCM, if you're familiar with advanced primary care management, and all of the other sort of care management areas, PIN services, CHI, all of that. Where I'm seeing clients be most successful is building tools that are medical devices, but do not require FDA clearance. So there's a subcategory of mobile medical apps in particular, software as a medical device, that are medical devices and do not require clearance by FDA, and they don't even require registration. But because they are medical devices, in a lot of ways, they are eligible for payment under existing Medicare Part B policy. And there are many places in the Medicare physician fee schedule where CMS has already established the ways in which that technology can support the various payment mechanisms that exist, as long as it's a medical device. So if we look at regulation, you have a medical device, you're likely going to be a decent candidate for reimbursement under existing remote patient monitoring codes, remote physiologic monitoring codes, remote therapeutic monitoring codes. Advanced primary care management is a really good one.
Yeah, you should do an episode on this.
Yeah, we could do a whole separate episode about it for sure.
I think it's going to be a big deal, especially for tech only providers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But so the point, the exciting part about APCM, I think, is it feels very overwhelming because there are 13 service elements that are very complicated, require a lot of work, both by the billing provider and the technology company that's providing support. But in the Medicare physician fee schedule, CMS has explicitly addressed the ways in which technology can support every single one of those 13 elements through automated workflows, identifying patient risk sooner using data analysis, automating documentation, building out templated care plans that are very easy for doctors to adjust based on the patient and customized to the patient's specific needs. So when, and in that case, actually, that type of technology doesn't even have to be a medical device at all. So you can kind of stay out of the messiness that is FDA regulation and just live within the technology and the payment spaces. Yeah. So, I think there's a lot of opportunity. We could, again, have a whole other podcast about care management and how technology plays a role there. But I think that despite the fact that there's chaos and confusion within the agencies right now, there is established policy that provides very clear pathways for technology to support reimbursable services, whether it's Medicare Part B or Medicare Advantage plans are required to cover everything that Medicare Part B covers. So even if we do shift to Medicare Advantage as a bigger percentage of Medicare patients and Medicare coverage, all of the things that already exist will still be covered, and maybe even more so. So again, just to sort of put a period at the end of this sentence, there is a lot of confusion, but there are established pathways that won't change despite the confusion that is happening right now.
Yeah, I think the loss is going to be to us as individual people living in this country.
Yeah.
And not to industry. I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in industry. I'm more worried about clean water and making sure, we have health insurance.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can argue back and forth, right? Because there is the issue of if we have people who are building companies that are tending to help in areas like Medicare Advantage, you've just got a pay boost, so it might be okay. But Medicaid and people working with exchanges and what have you, there are a number of areas of the health economy that are certainly going to change. But I mean, I guess what you're saying, Kaitlyn, is that things that look like devices and drugs are going to be having a trickier time, but there's enough regulation and payment sort of baked in already that things that are services that may include that types of technology is probably going to be more okay. And we've seen a fair boom in that already in RPM and RTM and these other areas you mentioned. What was the one you mentioned? The APAIC? I got lost in the lawyer.
APCM.
Yeah, APCM, Advanced Primary Care Management. It is a monthly reimbursement for primary care that is still fee for service, but captures all different types of.
Is this one of the ones that's going to be decimated by when CMMI gets abolished, or was that not a CMMI?
No. So it was just introduced for reimbursement this year for 2025. So it is new on the fee for service side, but
it's in regular Medicare. It's not an experimental pilot program.
That's right. They took a lot
75 other payment private programs that only Farzad Mostashari understands, and you. Get a tweet number 78 in his tweet stream. You go, I don't understand it anymore. I give up.
Yeah. It does incorporate a lot of the elements from the CMMI models, but despite the fact that those are going away, they're incorporated into APCM and to other aspects of reimbursement on the Part B side.
It's in regulatory, so I mean, there's a chance that they could blow up the Medicare physician fee schedule system and repeal it, but they got bigger fish to fry right now.
Well, that has been threatened, right, by Kennedy. Notably, he wanted to take the AMA's ownership.
I know. I can't wait
to away, which is fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I hope they do a reality television show about what's going to happen to the CPT editorial committee and the RUC. I want to eat popcorn. I want to find out the whole thing.
I mean, people have come after the RUC. So for those who are not following along at home, the RUC is the Resource-Based Relative Value Scale Utilization Committee. Is that the right name? It has the first R stands for a lot of stuff, but it's basically
we love an acronym.
it's what fixes Medicare fee-for-service fees, which then has massive ripple effects because everyone else pays, 100% or 200% or 500% or whatever of Medicare. Yeah. And over the years has massively favored procedures and specialists because the RUC committee is it's run by the AMA, but dominated by a bunch of specialty societies. And decade and a half ago, it was sued by a bunch of primary care doctors and who lost. The Supreme Court said the RUC is all okay. It can do what it likes in secret. And, Medicare may or may not accept its rules. If Kennedy wants to really go blowing that up, if you really wanted to make America healthy, I want to say again, it's never been healthy, but if you wanted to make American healthcare better, what you would do is create a primary care based system that paid primary care doctors to manage care, not paid specialists more money to do that. But
well, and at least have some transparency.
Yeah.
And I do not think that that's where this administration is heading, is more transparency, but it could happen.
Yeah, well, I will also just say, though, that the APCM codes are CMS created. They're not in the CPT code book. So again, that is already a movement by CMS to take control of the reimbursement for primary care and take some of that out of the hands of the AMA.
That's interesting. Okay. So we've got some interesting stuff there. Let me dive one more technical point of this, because I now I've got you two on the line. I've never understood this. Yeah. I have had any number of companies come to me and say, oh, blah, 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 we're going to do well because we've got this clever thing and it's going to be, an RPM or an RTM device. It's all good. And I go, no, it's not. It's a piece of software in which you're getting the patient to write down what happened to them or, something. It's not a blood pressure cuff reporting back a discrete piece of data. And many of them, some of them, like the areas of tracking pain, other areas which there's no easy, device to manage this, have been billing for this stuff and getting away, quote unquote, getting away with it, right? So how far does this go?
I think we're going to start to see. I think we're going to start seeing enforcement on that now. But anyway, Kaitlyn is the person to ask this question too.
You're going to get me on my soapbox.
That's why I asked
her. Yeah. So look, over the last couple of years, the OIG, the Office of Inspector General, has been.
They all got fired too, as well, right? Didn't they all get fired?
A lot of them did.
A
lot of them.
They're on vacation.
Yeah, they're on vacation. They've been conducting audits on providers that are billing for care management services, primarily remote physiologic monitoring, which is not as old as chronic care management, but older than RTM and some of the other areas of care management reimbursement that we see. It is my professional opinion that the reports we saw come out of those audits thus far were very flawed. I think that OIG has a job to do, but they're limited in the information that they can use to conduct their analyses. So what they did was they took a bunch of existing Medicare claims data and reviewed that. They looked at what CPT codes were billed, what was paid out for those codes, and that's kind of it. They did not look at medical record documentation. They did not talk to patients about what patients were experiencing. And so what they saw were some gaps, what they perceived as gaps in the way these services are being delivered. For example, there are codes that represent time spent monitoring data, and there are codes that represent supplying patients with devices to collect that data, the blood pressure cuff, et cetera. There are different requirements for each of those. So you have to have 16 days of readings in order to bill the device code, but you do not have to have 16 days of readings in order to bill the time code. And so what they're seeing is, in many cases, the device code is getting billed, but the time code isn't, because providers aren't meeting that minimum time threshold of 20 minutes. On the flip side, they're seeing time spent and codes getting billed for time spent, but not seeing a bill for the device. And so it looks like patients didn't have a device and providers made up that they were spending 20 minutes monitoring data that they never collected. But in reality, what's happening is patients are submitting, for example, 12 days of data. The device code can't get billed because they haven't met that 16-day threshold, but the time code does get billed because providers and the care team will spend 20 minutes or more monitoring just that 12 days worth of data. So in a way, I think the report thus far has been pretty flawed. I don't think there are as many gaps as OIG has perceived thus far. And just to sort of give a piece of context, OIG is just the office within HHS that enforces reimbursement rules and the anti-kickback statute and all of that. So they're essentially a partner to CMS.
And then what about the RPM versus RTM in terms of like device versus software? That's where he started.
Yeah. So I think there's a similar thing on the RTM side, but we just haven't seen anybody look that closely at it yet. And so I don't know if the same gaps would exist.
But you can bill RTM with just a piece of software.
Correct. Yes, you can bill RTM with just a piece of software.
You do not have to have a device.
That's right. That's right. You don't have to have a hardware, but the software does have to be a medical device. But that's where the FDA regulations come in, where if you can be subject to enforcement discretion and you don't have to go through clearance or register the device, the software can still be a medical device. You can still bill for it, but you don't have to go through the extra hoops of that FDA sets out.
But there's another area coming to right, not business tech coming right for this area, right, which is the idea that who is doing my 20 minutes? Does it have to be a human? Could it be an AI? And I've actually seen one company advertising that they will use their AI to support the human doing the hourage for the 20 minutes. Depending on whether you need to do more 20 minutes or less 20 minutes, they will use their AI to slow down or speed up the human accordingly, which is kind of ridiculous because when you're seeing now, companies like, well, there are many out there, but Hippocratic is one making a big fuss about using nurses to do education. You can imagine all of that stuff, and that recording is going to go to AI or ought to go to AI. So.
Yeah, we were actually just talking about this earlier. So yes,
that and 90s rap.
Yeah, that and 90s rap. I get this question all the time, right? Can I just use AI to do the 20 minutes? Frankly, I usually tell clients they shouldn't do that. They shouldn't meet the entire 20-minute threshold just using AI because there are specific rules about clinical staff being licensed or certified under state law, and AI right now wouldn't meet that requirement. So I do believe that for the time-based codes, there should be a real human involved in those interactions right now, just strictly for meeting the billing requirements. I'm not commenting on quality or efficiency or any of that, but I think just strictly for meeting the time requirements, there should be a human involved. Now, not to sort of take us back to APCM again, but the APCM codes are not time-based. And so there's a lot more opportunity there to leverage technology, to leverage AI. You can actually still bill for RPM and RTM if you also bill for APCM. So I would say if you want to fully remove the human from the technology piece, then I wouldn't go the route of RPM or RTM. I'd keep a human involved there, but I'd look more closely at APCM for how the technology can play a bigger role in the care management.
So let's take this a little bit wider because we're now hitting on two of the biggest issues that are going to either change or not change or be destroyed or whatever, or be stopped by regulation. So one of them is telehealth and location and licensing. And state by state licensing, which has been the bugbear for many telehealth companies, and they have to hire these doctors who are ridiculously licensed in 50 states, and they have to do these crazy.
A lot of them.
I'm sure you know, right? There's a bunch of crazy workarounds because apparently, if I'm sitting in New Jersey with my medical degree and you're in New York, apparently, what I know doesn't count on your body or something. There's that. And then related to this is the idea that there are several parts of clinical care that it looks like. And there was actually just a study out of Cornell, maybe Cornell.
That's cool.
A couple weeks ago. Yeah, a study out of one of those fancy Ivy League universities.
We went to Syracuse, so
the real upstate New York Ivy.
That's right.
What?
That's right.
Well, the fancier Ivy League school near Syracuse, somewhere near Syracuse.
Wow. Okay. But did they win?
I have a degree from Cambridge. I'm insulted. There's some new company called Oxbridge Partners, which somehow emerged. I saw on HGN the other day. Anyway, but here's my point. What did their study say? They did a therapy study, and they ran a chatbot against human therapists, and the chatbot did well as not better. Seems to me there are a ton of areas. Mental health therapy is obviously obvious one, where a lot of what's going on is rote conversation with a patient, and humans are no better than AI and probably worse. And the AI we're now seeing coming out of NVIDIA and other people like that is so good, and it's clearly going to get so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have already spoken to companies who are building an AI doctor. Like that is their intention. They know it's going to take a while, but that's what they're doing. I mean, that's coming. So
let me ask you about the regulation for both of those, right? So
yeah.
if Cornell says that the therapist, that their bot therapist is better than a human therapist already, is there anything stopping them just starting to use it, billing for it, or what does the regulations say about this kind of thing now? What's going to happen around that? What should these people be doing? And then compare and contrast if you could the cross-state telehealth things. That maybe that's a different topic, but it seems to me they're related.
Well, it goes back to the control of the state medical boards, the agencies within the states that govern the practice of medicine, the practice of counseling, the practice of dentistry, all of that. There are laws on the books in all 50 states and the District of Columbia that say if you aid and abet the unlicensed practice of whatever, you're guilty of a misdemeanor. Usually they're criminal and civil. And so that is the source of the prohibition on the use of tech to practice medicine. The state medical boards are not filled with young technologists who are also doctors. And so it's going to take a while for them to come around to any kind of new iteration of that. These are also, protectionist organizations that are filled with doctors who are trying to, who are enforcing the laws of the state, but also are business owners in a lot of cases and sort of protecting the way that they live and the way that they do business. And so the medical boards on a state-by-state basis are going to be in charge of this. There's not going to be a federal law that says AI is a doctor. That's just not going to happen. The way that changes happen at the medical board level are the Federation of State Medical Boards gets lobbies to change things. And then there is template language that gets walked into state houses and lobbied for. That's what happened and continues to happen in the telehealth space. I know you wanted to talk about sort of cross-border telehealth. We have lots and lots of compacts and things that sort of make it easy for licensed professionals to practice their profession across state lines. But again, the structure of how this changes at the state level, you're not going to have a law that says every licensed professional can now practice in every other state, because there's a medical board and there's a pharmacy board and there's a psychology board and there's a licensed marriage and family counselor board, right? There are individual siloed rules for each type of professional in every state. And so major upend change is unlikely to happen in a sweep. It's what makes our jobs really fun right now, as we get to sort of like watch it as it's happening. And I wanted to bring up another point, which came to me as we're having this conversation. People like you and us, we sort of make our living helping to navigate clients through all of these like hairy, esoteric questions around law and policy, and then what actually happens in business, inside of boardrooms. And, law firms like ours whose value is in being hyper specialized can be deep in a way, but we can't be as broad, as a massive organization like a Deloitte or a KPMG or a McDermott, Will and Emery, right? And so we are very aware of that. And part of what we wanted to do in the new firm was to develop an affiliate network of professionals that go deep in their particular area, but make accessing them pretty seamless. You and I have been at enough conferences for us to know that like we know people, right? We have used our network and our charm to become friends with a lot of very, very smart people. No, you have charm. You have charm. I've seen it. You do have charm. I've seen it in action. But, we wanted to leverage that network to do what we've been doing always, which is, hey, you need XYZ person that knows how to set up a clinical trial for a software as a medical device at a hospital in the Midwest. Like, we can find that person. We're working on formalizing that so that we can make the experience of getting to that person, interacting with that person, explaining to that person what you're doing, and moving quicker, which all entrepreneurs in this space want to do, much easier. So anyway, I'll be hitting you up about that affiliate network as well. But anyway, I wanted to sort of talk about how that can be another area of value that we're bringing to clients as we have these like very specific policy discussions. We're not going to know the answers to all of these, but pretty confident we can find the person, the Kaitlyn of whatever other, space.
But putting you on the spot about this particular thing, right? Sort of the replacement of the move online and the AIization, I think that's the word, of clinical care.
It is now. Let's say it is now. Yeah,
we'll use
it.
AIization. It needs another thing in there.
Coin that trademark. If anybody uses that, it's ours. To Matthew.
It's ours. It's been used in Congress.
I have enough problems with the Indian guys who stole Health 2.0 from HIMSS, and HIMSS didn't care. Have offered everybody in America an award at their show.
R.I.P.
The joke is the joke is their little conference, if it existed, claimed to be on in Vegas when HIMSS was there. I should have gone. I didn't go anyway. But let me get back to my question on the spot. How badly does all this clever stuff that we see, people saying, I've got this thing that's going to, help this doctor with AI or replace this doctor with AI or replace this therapist or, and do it online that had to be in person. And I've had telehealth visits that have diagnosed the particular part of my back that hurt by watching me bend and stretch and, ask me where the pain was. I mean, doctors can do incredible stuff. Real doctors, can do incredible stuff. So I think there's incredible opportunity for us to change healthcare using all this stuff. Is it gonna make it past any of this regulatory state-based stuff, or is it gonna kill us all dead, or where are we?
There are already things in motion to make cross-state licensing a little bit easier. I'm not sure. There are risks to making it too easy. But I'll tell you, the biggest hurdle that we've got to get past is reimbursement for this stuff. Shout out to Kyle Zebley and the team at the ATA, like doing the hardest work over the past several years, just trying to get this telehealth bill through, just, with things that are common sense that both sides of the aisle already agree on anyway. I think that's the problem that I would want to focus on first, because once there's money behind it and there's entrepreneurs who can make more money via telehealth, they're going to start donating to candidates who can change things on a state and local level that will, provide a glide path. But while we're, before they know they can get reimbursed for this stuff, you're always going to have less activity. And so I think that's got to happen first.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with everything Rebecca just said. I will go so far as to say 100% there is going to be a time where these tools do make it to market. They do get through FDA clearance if they need it. They do figure out a way to navigate state licensure rules. There is going to be a day where that happens. I mean,
it's not going to stop.
No, exactly. I would say it's a situation where not to sound, I don't know what the word, but I think the toothpaste is out of the tube, right? Like you can't put the toothpaste back into the tube. People are building these tools already. And so whether the government likes it or not, they're going to make it to market. And it takes a long time to enforce any rules against those tools, particularly when there really aren't that many rules that exist around it, right? Because there absolutely are state licensure laws and regulations that everyone has to follow. But those regulations don't say anything about software practicing medicine at all. They say
it would be their interpretation.
Exactly.
And then somebody would go to court.
And then they'd have to make an argument and a judge would have to decide. And by the way, we're lawyers, like no hate on the legal system, but is the judge who hears that case even going to have the right experience and understanding of technology and healthcare rules to rule on that appropriately? Like, I don't know. So, I think, yes, there is a world where this happens. How soon? I don't know. There are entrepreneurs that will take a big risk. There are, people have made history in healthcare by doing things that are technically illegal, and eventually they get in trouble and they have to stop doing what they're doing or change what they're doing. But they change things forever by doing that. So I think we'll see a world, honestly, maybe in the next, there's a company already, I won't name them just because they're not our client and websites can say one thing and mean another, but there's a company out there with a website that says our AI tool can replace your nurses.
Yeah.
You don't need nurses. You can just use our AI.
Yeah.
And at some point someone's going to start asking them questions and digging
That's
into.
why they're on strike in California.
Yeah, exactly. And start digging into whether that's allowed or whether it's not. And that could be in the next year. Like we could see this conversation start to happen in the next year, or it could be 5 years. I really don't know. But yes, one day we will get there. I just don't know what that timeline looks like right now.
Yeah, I mean, look at healthcare is always complicated by the fact that you have separate regulation and this weird payment system where you have to, as you said, something sort of completely obvious can't be paid for because we pay this ridiculous fee for service system, which is based on what was introduced for the Dallas school teachers in 1930, and makes no sense in 2025. Still, never mind. We're going back to the 1890s anyway in the country, so maybe we should go. Maybe it's okay to have all those old regulations.
I'm not ready for that.
We're recording this on one of the days when I think Trump put an 105% tariff on China last night because apparently it was okay in 1897 or 1852 or something. I don't think we imported that much from China back then, but it's a little bit different now.
Listen, I think healthcare wants the same thing that banking wants, and that is just a breather, just like some break in the chaos, so that we know where to direct our energy. Right. And so I don't know if the dust is going to settle, right? Like we may just be operating in this. But again, in my work in general, and because I'm in charge of what clients I will work with, it is almost always true that I am interacting with people who are really trying to improve the lives of people who have dedicated, taken major risks and dedicated their lives to building something that will be to the benefit of humankind. And so I feel very blessed to be, to have this as my job, to have a good reminder amid a lot of really ugly things happening around the world, that there are people out there trying to do good. And it's part of our why.
Yeah, for sure.
Well.
That's great. Well, that's a great place to end. You guys are optimistic, and I would share that. I get depressed about every 5 years. I'm certainly in one of those depressed modes at the moment that none of this stuff's ever going to change. But
it would be understandable.
I'm hopeful it will change before I die, at least. But you can see the opportunity that can be brought on by all this new technology we see every day to really improve how care is delivered, how patients experience care. And we know the mess that is going, that it's the patient experience and the clinician experience at the moment. So, it's great that you guys are sort of on the side of the people who are trying to, break down those. Esther Dyson said this at the very first Health 2.0 conference, is that healthcare is a calcified hairball that's got stuck in the bottom of a gutter in a drain. And
wow.
breaking it up.
Quite an image.
Breaking it up has been the life's work of many of us, and I'm not sure the hairballs are getting bigger rather or more calcified. But
maybe that's why we like working with the early stage companies so much, and why we held on to sort of that mentorship role, because going back to the well of my daughter had a rare genetic disease, and my wife and I went through so much, and if I hadn't been a independently wealthy tech founder, I never would have been able to help my family. And so that's fucked up. Like, I'm going to build something that's going to make sure that other families don't have to deal with that. Like that, going back to that as a well to remain motivated to do the work that we do, works every time.
Yeah. I mean, maybe
let's have more tech founders doing. Oh, sorry, go on, Kaitlyn.
I was just going to say, because now I'm stuck on the hairball example, maybe each of our clients is pulling like one tiny piece of hair out of that hairball. But if we have 100 clients that are each pulling one tiny piece of hair, maybe we pull 100 hairs out of that hairball by the end of the year.
Now I want you to go to Dolly and I want you to give them a transcript of what she just said.
No, I don't.
And have that be the thumbnail for this podcast episode.
I'm just hoping we have a few tech billionaires who actually want to fix healthcare and not.
They're out there.
Not at the start of their goal is to is to stop poor people in Africa getting vaccines or send people back across the border.
No, they're out there.
Mark Cuban is doing a lot of great work. Someone I know just interviewed him, and he's got some really exciting things upcoming.
Yeah, we'll find them. We'll send them to the healthcare blog.
I know.
Elon Musk, in my view, but there we go. Or anyway, I'm a Bernie Sanders guy. They should all be taxed down to being less than billionaires, because they could probably all get by at 900 million, but whatever.
I'm married to a Bernie bro.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's true.
Well, that's all good. I mean, well, he's like me. He's been shouting about this for 50 years, and no one's been paying any attention.
I know.
I am once again asking to just pass telehealth expansion permanently. Please.
Thank you.
That's the one thing. All right, fantastic. All right, well, look, we should wrap this up because we can talk about this, and we will talk about this again.
Yes, thank you so much.
This
Matthew,
I think is the first podcast from the Elevare Law Firm. Is that right?
It is.
It's true. Inaugural.
Wow.
Our inaugural podcast.
I'm probably just going to give this to you, and you can run it on your podcast channel, which doesn't exist yet. But for now, no, I'm kidding. All right.
Perfect. We're going to call it. We're going to call it Elevision.
Elevision.
Yeah. Later this year, Q3, Elevision is getting built.
All right. I'm looking forward to that. All right. I've been speaking with Kaitlyn O'Connor and Rebecca Gwilt. They are the new law firm of Elevare Law, and just kicking off this week. So congrats, ladies, on the new firm. And thanks for the chat about healthcare and regulation and law and all that good stuff. And good luck.
Thank you, Matthew. Great to meet you. Thank you for having us.